a crude and disgusting video sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video, and I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity. It is an insult not only to Muslims, but to America as well. For as the city outside these walls makes clear, we are a country that has welcomed people of every race and every faith. We are home to Muslims who worship across our country. We not only respect the freedom of religion, we have laws that protect individuals from being harmed because of how they look or what they believe. We understand why people take offense to this video because millions of our citizens are among them.
Hillary Mann Leverett joins us now live from New York. She's a professor at the American University in Washington and a former White House and State Department official. Hillary Mann Leverett, President Obama dedicating quite a chunk of his time at the UN to talk about the rise of so-called extremism, the violence that followed the release of that anti-Islam video. Did he strike the right balance in talking about the need to respect freedom of speech, but also the need to respect different religions, in this case Islam?
You know, it's hard for me to say that he really struck, I think, a good balance, or that this speech would do anything to help America's position in the Middle East. What is never said, but is critically important to say, is that a lot of the anger that we see in the Middle East, and this is borne out by public opinion polling done year after year after year, has a lot to do with U.S. policies in the Middle East, not just one video being produced, but years of U.S. policies that have included invasions that have killed literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. That's something that never gets addressed, and I think that's something that President Obama, didn't mention at all in this address. So in terms of doing something to shore up America's position in the Middle East, I don't think this address was meant to do that. I don't think it did that. I think it was intended more as an address to the American public on the eve of an American election just a few weeks away. And I think it was an attempt to tell the American people that what we have done in the Middle East in the past couple of years on his watch has been good. It's an attempt to rewrite the narrative of our support for years of dictatorship under Hosni Mubarak in Egypt and dictatorship in Tunisia, Yemen, even in Libya, and that he's done the right thing. It's an attempt by the president, I think, to rewrite that narrative on the eve of an election where now candidate Romney thinks that maybe the president is vulnerable in an area of foreign policy where he didn't sense that maybe even just a few weeks ago.
And does he, as you say, he is in full campaign mode. How much of his speech was designed to fend off any attacks he may encounter from the Republican right about being weak on foreign policy, being weak on Iran, about being weak in the face of the rise of so-called extremism in the Muslim world?
I think a lot of it was very much focused on ensuring that there's a perception of strength, protecting what he sees as his very significant achievements in foreign policy. But again, the problem is there's a disconnect with what the president and his administration thinks are achievements and reality, what actually happened. The United States was not really in support of democratization in the Middle East. It has been very much in favor of supporting dictatorships in the Middle East, especially where they serve our interests. So this idea that he's going to be able to rewrite the narrative, score a few points and get reelected, it may work in the short term. But what we have seen for years for the United States is this kind of policy does not work to help protect U.S. interests or literally American lives on the ground. And it's just astounding that more than a decade after 9/11, I served in the U.S. government. I was here in New York at the U.S. mission to the United Nations on 9/11, that we still cannot have an honest, decent discussion about what U.S. policy does in the Middle East to engender this kind of response to try to use violence. It's as if President Obama was quoting a page out of Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld's playbook from the George Bush administration, saying that, democracy really is untidy. These type of things are just small groups of people who are just violent extremists who hate Americans because of our values for freedom, without ever addressing the very real problems and very real impact U.S. policy has had in the Middle East.
And putting it all within the international, but also within the domestic context, when it comes to Iran, did you hear from President Obama the kind of speech you might have heard had he not been running for re-election? And how divergent are the U.S. and Israeli positions today?
Well, I think Obama actually made a very important statement in his speech that changed U.S. policy in an important way. For years, basically, in the international community, there is a sovereign right to a fuel cycle to enrich uranium. That is a sovereign right that has been recognized by the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, of which Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, is a signatory to. But in his speech, Obama said that Iran has a right only to access peaceful nuclear power, not that Iran has a sovereign right that is recognized by the NPT to enrich uranium. That's a big change in U.S. policy, and it's one that I think is meant to potentially justify any action taken against Iran to punish it for pursuing its continued enrichment of uranium.
Mann Leverett, always good to get your thoughts on U.S. foreign policy. Thanks very much.